Okay, hello everyone. Just a very quick idea. Um, we have over here in a Rashi that on Yom Shemini, it says that the Kohen, that the Aaron Kohen went into the Mishkan, and he did all the karbanos, and he wanted to bring down the Shechina into the Mishkan. So the pasuk says, "Vayav Moshe ve'Aharon at Oel Moed." Says that Moshe and Aaron came to Oel Moed. Vayitzu ve'Varchu, and they went out and they blessed the nation. Vayirachu Hashem l'Kolam. So Rashi is bothered that l'chayr was supposed to be Aaron's mission. Well, that was the whole point. Aaron was supposed to have been doing this. Previous Rashis and the Rashi in the next one, it says that Moshe Rabbeinu said to Aaron that he was chosen for this. So Rashi says two options. Why did Moshe come back into the Mishkan with Aaron? So it says like this: Davar acher kivin shira Aaron, since Aaron saw shekavar kol karbanos v'nasu kol hamaisim. So everything was, all the corners already came, and all the maisim were already done. Everything was done. But you're the Shechina Yisrael, and yet the Shechina didn't come down. So he was mitzvah, and he said, "You're there, ani shekas Hakadosh Baruch Hu alai." He says, "I know that Hakadosh Baruch Hu was upset with me." Ubishvili lo yorda Shechina Yisrael, and it was because of me that the Shechina did not come down for Israel. So Amal Moshe, so he said to his brother Moshe, "Moshe Achi, Moshe my brother, Kacha Sisali Shenichnosti v'Nisbayashti. This is what you did to me, that I came in and I was nisbayish. Miyan Nichnas Moshe Imay B'Kshirachamim." So therefore Moshe went into the Almed with him, and they asked for Rachamim from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and v'yorda Shechina Yisrael, and then the Shechina came down for the Jewish people. So this is a sifra, and there's a lot of kashas, but the most basic kasha really is that Rashi makes it clear throughout the entire thing. Over here it says like this. So Aaron achi kedai v'chashuv mimani shayidei karbanos sav avadai sai tisha shchina b'neichem v'seidu shamakim bachar boy, chosen Aaron, and that's the Rashi, which is v'yitzu v'yvarchu asam. So it's mamash on the same. It's right after Moshe Aaron, and it says v'yitzu v'yvarchu asam. And Rashi saying the pshat of these words is that Moshe was telling the Jewish people that Aaron was chosen, but over here he had to go in with Moshe, with Aaron. So how can it make sense? The Rashi is saying that the parish of the words v'yitzu v'yvarchu asam is that Moshe was telling the Jewish people that Aaron is the one that's chosen. He's better than him. And at the same time, you're saying that in the parish of the words Vayeva Moshe v'Aaron, you're saying that the pshat is that Moshe had to come in with Aaron because the Shekhinah wasn't coming down with Aaron alone, and they had to come in and Mirachim. So if that's true, then how that's an inherent stira. You don't see that Aaron was chosen because Moshe had to come in and help him. If he was chosen, if it was his mission, then why wouldn't he be even Sliach on his own? So l'chara, it's a very clear, if you read these two Rashis, Pasuk Chav Gimel, the two Rashis on that pasuk, and according to the Davar Acher, it's a very, very big contradiction which needs to be answered. And then in general, we also have to understand what exactly is the idea, because we know that when it comes to the themes in the Beis Hamikdash, and it comes to the Kalim, when it comes to all the sorts of tmunos and pictures that were in the Beis Hamikdash, there's a rule: Ein kateger nasa saneger. There's a rule that they kateger something that was a cause of sin, of chiyuv, of bad for the Jewish people, that showed that they were not in line with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and in relationship with Him, can't become a kateger. So, for example, we say, why on Yom Kippur doesn't the Kohen come in with the big day zahav? The Gemara in Yuma says, why doesn't he come in with the golden clothing? So it says the Gemara, what do you mean? Ein kateger nasa saneger. The egel was made out of gold. So if the egel is made out of gold, you want to now get kapara, you can't say on Yom Kippur that the Kohen should come in with gold. It makes no sense. That's what you find. The other time you find it is the Gemara says, why isn't there a picture of an egel on the merkava of a Kadosh Baruch Hu? And the Gemara says, because Ein kateger nasa saneger, because since the Jewish people were chayta in egel, therefore it can't be one of the pictures on the merkava of the kisei of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. So the shaila is, why doesn't that apply to the person as well. In other words, Aaron has a good point when he's saying, listen, so he was saying, Yodeh ani shekos HaKadosh Baruch Hu alai, b'shvili are the Shechina Yisrael. It's because of me the Shechina didn't come down to Yisrael. So, l'chera, his point is that since Aaron was the one through whom the Jewish people did the Maisa Egel, because he didn't sacrifice his life and he instead facilitated it for them, which Rashi says is the whole reason why his children are about to die. So, if that's true, so then why Taka, and how does it work that Aaron was able to flip that around and and be able to be the one that was sure that did cause the Shekhinah to come down? Because l'chera they're exactly the opposite. One is he's making the ego, which is Avodah Zarah, which is chasing away HaKadosh Baruch Hu and removing the Shekhinah from Klal Yisrael, which is exactly what happened, because they had to give away their crowns, which they got when they said Nasav and Nishma, which represented an extremely high level of closeness to God. And on the other hand, now he's the one who, he himself, is bringing the Shekhinah down into the Mishkan. So how does that work? What's the mechanism through which that can work? And also, we have it's a very interesting thing that we know that it says that it's Banav HaNoi Sarim. Rashi says that they were left over because of the din that happened to Aaron. So now, we really also have to understand that l'chera, even after this, he gets the punishment. In other words, simply speaking, it's a punishment to Aaron that he did the ego, therefore he was meant to, Rashi says this in dvar, he was meant to die, and all of his children were meant to die as well, but had Moshe daven for him, and half of it was niskaper. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu forgave it l'chatzain, therefore he lived and his two sons lived. But l'chera there was an einish that was supposed to be given, and now therefore, once you know that's true, it doesn't really make any sense that they died as a result of him making the ego, and that happened after he was able to be married, he was able to bring down the Shekhinah. But if he's able to bring down the Shekhinah, that proves that he's already forgiven. So how can it be that the punishment for the ego, which is his son's dying, is being met out to him post it being clear that he was forgiven for having done the Maaseh Ego because the Shekhinah was brought down? So those are the Shilohs. So, in order to answer these questions, the Yesod that we have to go with is a Yesod which is really unique to human beings, and that is that the Gemara says that anyone who does teshuvah me'ahava, then what happens is that Zedonos are nasa lahem keshgagos. Sorry, their Zedonos are nasa lahem zechuyos. And what you see from that is that a person has the ability to take a action that he did which was negative, and not only can it be that the action that was negative no longer applies to that person, but it could be such that that action is transformed into a zechus for the person who did it, even though when he did it he was doing an avera 100%. And in this case, that dynamic is really very, very appropriate for a different reason, besides for the fact that Mestama we can say that Aaron would have done Teshuvah Me'ahava, but really for a different reason. And that is that, as is very well known, Aaron HaKohen had a cheshbon when he did what he did, which was that the Gemara says that Im Yehareg Navi v'Kohen b'Mikdash Hashem, that there's a rule that if both a Navi and a Kohen were to be killed in one day, then the Jewish people would not have the opportunity to do Teshuvah, and therefore Aaron HaKohen sacrificed himself and his spiritual well-being for the Jewish people, because if they would have killed him as well, which is what they did to Chor, then that pasuk, which says that if a Navi and a Kohen get killed in one day, that there's no more opportunity for Klal Yisrael to go forward and develop and do Teshuvah, that pasuk would have come true, and therefore the whole journey of the Jewish people would have been over at that point. And since Aaron HaKohen knew that to be the case, he said that he'd rather sacrifice his own spiritual well-being, his own level of right and wrong. He knew that it was wrong to make the ego, and he knew that it was wrong to facilitate it, But he also knew that if he wouldn't, then the whole journey would be over for everyone. So he sacrificed himself for the sake of the Jewish people. And he sacrificed his spiritual well-being, his whole identity, all of what he was, he sacrificed for the Jewish people. And even though in the manner that he did it in a manner which was an avera, which is why it was a sacrifice, that he did something which destroyed what he was and made him very far from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore he had to get the onesh. However, that understanding, that cheshbon, once it's over, and once Aaron HaKohen does the shuvah, and once he comes out of that state of sin, then the metzius of what happens is that the actual inner midah, which drove that maisa, is now used for the positive. Meaning that, why did Aaron do it? Because he cared about and he wanted it to be that the Jewish people would have continuity. He wanted them to have a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore now, when he does the Teshuvah and when the punishment is met out, Aaron HaKohen's Hagufa, that which what he did by making the ego, is now becomes Hagufa the schus, why he should be the one that is having a Shashashina. Because if you think about it, the only reason why he did the ego was so that Jewish people would be able to continue to have the opportunity to relate with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why? Because if he wouldn't have done it, then the whole process would have been over. So therefore, Hagufa, that Avain that he did, became itself the reason why he is Ra'i for the Ashras Ashrin. And what we see over here, and l'chara, is this is what you see as being the idea of what's in play, is that in order for Aaron to be Zocha, for the Shekhinah to be yored through him, what was required was Busha. And the midah of Busha is a midah which is a midah of understanding. It's a midah which makes it such that the person whom experiences it experiences the smallness of himself. In other words, if I get embarrassed, then essentially what's happening is that I'm experiencing something about myself which is not complete, and therefore I'm experiencing my own smallness. I'm being misbayish. He goes and he's in front of all the Jewish people and he's doing the avodah, and it's not coming down. And he's being misbayish. And therefore, the busha itself is what makes it that he would now be zoche for the Shekhinah to come down, because the busha is the experience of Aaron of himself, that it's not him that's worthy, but rather that he's going to be used as a conduit through which the Jewish people will relate to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, he had to experience a smallness of self in order to achieve being the conduit between the Jewish people and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that smallness of self came through the busha. So therefore, that's the answer of why, even though Moshe ends up going in with him, it's not the pshat that it's now the koyach of Moshe in addition to his that made it that the Shekhinah came down. No, it was Aaron. The only thing is that in order for Aaron to experience the busha, it had to be that it didn't come down for him alone, and Moshe had to join him. That was the process that he had to go through for the busha. And the busha is what made it that he was able to serve as a conduit, which was the original kateger, the sneger, and the whole reason that he was zoch in the first place to be the kohen. And it's in that same midah which we find, even though it's not directly the same emotional mechanism that you're using to get there, but it's the same midah of smallness and of self being made smaller, that made it that he would be zocha to the kahuna in the first place, which, as we know, is from the fact that that Hashem says to Moshe that Aaron is going to see you and he's going to be happy in his heart. and meaning that he's not going to have any problem with you being the main Navi. And that's a level of making self smaller, and that is what the Midah that you find consistently. Again, that was made that Aaron Zoche to the Kahuna. And the general idea of this is that the only possible way to truly achieve a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and a dynamic in which he is in your life, can only be through a level of self-realization as to the nature of how small a person is, and how much he is getting and receiving from HaKadosh Baruch Hu on a daily basis, in all the ways that he is doing that. And if there is any level of ego and of self where you believe that the totality of the result of what you are in your life is due to you, that is an automatic contradiction to the ability to have a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because it's so the actual Metzius. The cheshbon of how that works is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave you all of your abilities, and he gave you all of your circumstances which you found yourself in, and the only thing that you did was you decided on how to allocate those abilities and skills and gifts and circumstances in your life. And that, if it was just you, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu hadn't given you the skills and the circumstances and the community and all the things that are God-given in your situation, the fact of your decision of what to do or not to do would have almost zero ramification, because you wouldn't have any of the skills and the means to do what it is that you decided. Which means in any given circumstance, situation, and result, the result that you see is not due to you whatsoever. The only chilek that you have is the fact that you chose to use the circumstances that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put you in for positive and growth and tzedek-oriented things, and that should fuel a sense of self-esteem, but in no way should it inform ego. In no way should it be that you feel that the totality of the result of what you're seeing and of what you have in your life is due to you in any way. And once you achieve that perspective, that everything is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and even your skills and your abilities and your looks and your money and all these things are God-given to the proportion that you're seeing them, then you can have a room in your mind and in your emotional lexicon to handle the mitzias of a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because it is most of what you have that belongs to him and comes from him. Good Shabbos.